Memphis was sitting on the sidelines at first, and then James Wiseman and his family decided to sue and go get a temporary restraining order in a local county court in Memphis, and got the restraining order. But that didn't mean Memphis had to play James Wiseman. So Memphis is taking a risk here, and it seems like the president of the university and the athletic director are all in saying that, listen, I know how this normally works, and we're supposed to hold the player out until the NCAA says okay, but we're not doing that. We believe in this player, and they're catering to their fan base, and they're going to fight the NCAA on this. The problem is there's something called the restitution rule, which is in Bylaw 19, which says if you do what Memphis is doing, if you go into a local court and get a temporary restraining order and you play when there's an eligibility cloud, you play a player that later turns out to be ineligible, you are subject to a long list of penalties. And it's basically a codified threat that if you go against one of our rulings, we are going to hit you with a bag of hammers afterwards. And that includes postseason bans. It could be even this year. There's a possibility that the NCAA could levy a postseason ban on Memphis this year and on into the future. So I can't imagine the NCAA is going to sit here taking this lying down. Wiseman could play the whole year, but the issue is what penalties could come to Memphis if it's determined that he was indeed ineligible and played.
Which is why Chase Young didn't play for Ohio State against Maryland this past weekend. We understand he's practicing today. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be back on the field playing. So it is unusual for schools, as you suggest, to
unprecedented.
Challenge.
It's unprecedented.
Does that mean the walls are crumbling here once Memphis sets this precedent, that the walls are going to crumble?
I don't think so. I've not spoken with a single administrator since this started that would do the same thing Memphis is doing here. And that's not to say I think what Memphis is doing is wrong. It just comes with substantial risk. There are those that feel that the rules, and I'm one of them, I think the rules should change. But the NCAA is not really acting any differently in this case than it has acted in a bunch of cases before this. So it's not like Memphis is somehow being picked on here. It is unusual to have a former great player like Penny Hardaway that was coaching in town, that has given a bunch of money to the university and coaches some amazingly good prospects, both in summer basketball and at Memphis East High School, then becomes the head coach a couple years later. That's very unusual. But I think if Hardaway had not been the head coach, if he was still coaching at Memphis East, I think the NCAA would look upon this in a similar fashion, that he's a representative of the university's athletic interests. So, look, the NCAA is acting like they always do, but they're looked upon so unfavorably in the public right now. I think it's kind of an open question as to what they're going to do next. Do they go into court now and try to remove this case to federal court? Do they fight it, or do they just say, hey, look, we've told you he's ineligible. If you want to play him, it's on you. But if it turns out later on that we're right, we are coming after you. I think it may be the latter that they decide to pursue.
And Jay, there are a lot of moving parts here. I mean, there's also, of course, the issue of whether Penny Hardaway is acting as a booster because he has donated $1 million to his alma mater. There's also the issue of the NCAA initially saying that this young man was eligible and then saying they got that call wrong and rescinding that call, even though their protocols tell them you're not supposed to rescind it. That complicates this as well.
It does, and I actually think that's Memphis's best argument in this whole thing. The idea somehow that Penny Hardaway was not a representative of the university's athletic interest, I think is going to be a harder hurdle for Memphis to get over in this. But if they go with the ruling, the initial ruling on May 29th, that Wiseman was eligible, and then later on rescinded. One thing that's a complication in this, though, if you look at Memphis's statement that they put out on Friday, they said that Memphis said that they got the initial ruling on May 29th that Wiseman was eligible, but then further information came to light that necessitated a deeper dive into this that they did jointly with the NCAA and did it for a period of months. That doesn't sound to me like the NCAA just said, oh, we were wrong, but everything's cool. Like, just go ahead and do your thing. It sounds like this was more of an issue in between May 29th and October 31 than Memphis is trying to portray.
Wiseman is a remarkable young player. I mean, he could be the first pick in the draft next year. Maybe Memphis says, you know what, whatever happens after he's gone happens, but this is too good an opportunity for our fans, for the team, even if they strip us of a national title, to just surrender it to the NCAA. Is that maybe what they're thinking?
Well, a little bit. James Wiseman is a great prospect. He's a Chris Bosh type player that could be the #1 pick. He's also a great young man. There's no indication that he had any knowledge of any of this. But what appears to be unquestionable is that his mother took $11,500 from Penny Hardaway for relocation expenses to move from Nashville to Memphis, so that Wiseman could play for Penny Hardaway at Memphis East High School. That appears incontrovertible as fact. So that's really the biggest issue here. But to your point, what Memphis is doing, their fan base is completely behind this. They want to fight the NCAA, and they want Wiseman to play. And they're basically saying, look, let him vacate all this stuff later. So what? We're on a roll. Our football team's doing well. We fired Tubby Smith. We brought in Penny Hardaway, just like everybody wanted and was chanting for while Tubby Smith was there. So the idea that this was unforeseeable, I think, is nonsensical. But they want Wiseman to play, and they're willing to risk whatever consequences come their way. But the consequences, Jeremy, I think could be severe if it turns out that Wiseman was indeed ineligible and played for any length of time while ineligible.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports and analysis, download the ESPN app, and live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.